out there, Dan, is they're not doing enough positional training. I think this is so huge. So what I mean by positional training is, let's say I want to get better at escaping side control. We do a round, maybe 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour, where you're on top of me in side control. I'm trying to get out. If I get out, then we switch, and then I get on top of you, and you try to get out, and then it's all about developing our game and learning. I think it's almost impossible for people not to learn if they don't do positional training, or it's way, way harder. It drives me crazy when people resist it, especially escaping, like side control and mount, like you or back control. You need the reps, or you're just not going to get it done, right?
Yes. What do you think about this? Because I've
Uh
run
huh.
into this where positional training can be particularly frustrating if you're doing positional training with someone at a very different skill level than you, particularly a much better skill level than you. So you're
Okay.
saying let's drill side control,
All right.
and you're like, or a typical example, guard passing, where you're like, I can never pass your guard,
Well,
and you are always passing
okay.
my guard, and that gets very
Okay,
frustrating
here
later.
that's a little bit of an exception, Dan, because guard passing is a pretty broad position. But I think the more you can shrink the position down, um, the more learning opportunities you have, the more controlled the experiment is. So yeah, I get it, but what we found is if you make the position narrow enough, then you can take people with very different skill levels, and they start to equalize a little bit because John Danaher talks about something where he says most positions have something that he calls the central problem, where I don't know how to describe this. It's sort of like, you know, I got to get over your knee. So you either got to push your knee down or I got to lift my hip up over to get over your knee. But if I lift my hip up too much, you might sweep me. So like there's this problem where both of us are aware of the problem and we're both trying to solve it. And whoever's better at solving the problem wins the position. You know what I mean?
Right.
And when you shrink the positions down enough, the problem becomes more obvious. Then you level the playing field because you pretty much know, oh, I'm trying to grab your neck or I'm trying to pin you, and you're like, I'm trying to not let him grab my neck, and I'm trying to not let him pin me, and then we just work it out and we see what happens. You know what I mean? Um, so, but the guard is a very broad position, so you still want to, of course, do that passing the guard. We do a lot of that, but that's a little bit harder. So if somebody's really good and you're really new, then yeah, you're probably not going to get a lot out of it.
But it's also, so you're saying positional training, but it might not just be escape from side control. You can start, like you said, shrinking it down.
Yes.
Like, here's a goal.
Yeah.
Get
Sometimes we do. All right, half guard. So I get half guard with you, Dan. I got my chest under your chest. I got an underhook, and I got a cross face, and maybe we go from here. Or I have all of that, and now I have my left butterfly hook on top of your thigh, and about to pry my leg out. So a white belt could be like one step away from passing against a black belt, and now you've kind of leveled the playing field. And now the central problem is he's trying to get that knee out and pass, and I'm trying to sweep him or regard, and we're trying to figure that out right there, and the problem gets very narrow, and you get some good learning there, and yeah, I find that is just the best way to develop. I do it a lot with my son. I do something with him that's similar. I call it red teaming. So like now he's working on his berimbolo. So I don't know if you know what that is, Dan. That's basically he's trying to get underneath me and get to my back somehow, invert and come underneath me. So we start in a certain position, and I let him start to come underneath me, and then I just give him a certain amount of resistance. And the idea is that, you know, it's a new technique for a new position for him. So, I don't go 100% in the beginning. I give him a certain amount of resistance, so it's difficult, but he can get a positive result out of it. He can score. He either gets my back or he gets on top of me. And then I start giving him more and more resistance, or vary the resistance. I start doing different things. I start holding the leg, start holding the arm. I try to do different things, and then what happens is we end up learning a lot about the position, and he ends up getting better and better at it. And for me, it's very rewarding training because I can do an hour of that with him, and I can learn a lot by just seeing what he's doing to me. and I get a great workout, and we're not concerned about winning or losing. It's not like, oh, he beat me today or I beat him today. You know what I mean? And we keep coming back to the same position.
And maybe this is obvious to you, but not as much to me. But it helps you identify what that central problem is, right? Like or
Exactly.
problems.
Yeah.
Like
Yes.
for me, a lot of times it's
Yes.
like I'm going to try to get out of. Someone's got side control me. I'm going to try to get out, and I'm not identifying central problem. I'm
Right.
just trying to get out, and you're just sort of not. You don't have a specific plan. And
Dan,
you're just
that's a
kind of-
great point. If you don't know what the central problem is, how can you figure it out, right? That's a great
yeah.
point. It's almost impossible, right? The other thing about the positional training, I had a guy who's relatively new. He's been with us for a few months, and I told him, I go, he's struggling to get out of side control. I go, you got to train here positionally, and here's what you want to do: get your hands in the right position, inside out again. Here's what you want to do. He's like, oh, okay. I'm like, yeah, but you got to do it now. You got to spend like an hour doing this with some resistance, and then when it doesn't work, try to figure out why it didn't work. Like, oh, I took my hand out and then it didn't work. I was inside, then I went outside. It didn't work. Like, you got to do that. If you just free roll all the time, especially as a white belt, there's too many variables that they're not going to improve, It's like, I want to go to your house, and I know you live in Walpole, but you don't tell me your address, and I just drive around Walpole looking for a car that looks like you or a person that looks like you. I might end up finding your house, but it's going to take me a hell of a lot longer than if I actually knew your address, and then I could try to figure it out. So when you do this positional training, you're just, you're getting the address. So you just make it so much easier for yourself. I just find the quality of training so much better. I develop so much faster when I train that way. And if you really want to add something new, you kind of have to do it that way. I think when people are really good, they can get, a new blue belt or a white belt, and then they can do positional training without even telling the other person, you know what I mean? Because they're so much more advanced. They can just keep going to the same position and make it happen, which is great. But you can also just objectively do the positional training. So, yeah, I can't stress that enough. All right, Dan, here it is. The biggest mistake that everybody out there is making in their jiu-jitsu